Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. My name is Andy Fell, and I'm the founder of a business called Gift 631, an events brand called What Winners Do, and very, very privileged tonight that we have the current Socceroos coach, Graham Arnold, also known as Arnie. A quick plug for next week. We also have a guest interviewee next week, Olympic medalist and entrepreneur, a guy called Steve Smith, not the batsman. Steve was an Olympic high jumper for the Team GB and won a bronze medal in Atlanta in 1996. And Steve, no surprise, is going to talk about how you raise your personal team and business bar. So over to tonight's call. First of all, I'd just like to say I'm immensely grateful to an amazing human being, a guy by the name of Phil Moss. Phil, some of you will remember, is a previous Future You speaker. Phil was an A-League coach down here in Australia for the Central Coast Mariners, assistant coach at Sydney FC, and is now an executive coach at the National Australia Bank. And I'm a great believer that relationships are the foundation of everything. And we do owe Mossy a debt of gratitude for making tonight's call happen. I'm also, it's a real privilege that tonight I can sit back and listen. One of my great friends, a massive supporter of Gift 631, is a guy called Paul Tucker, aka Tux. And Tux, as well as being a great friend, client, and supporter of mine, is also a huge football fanatic. So without further ado, I'm actually going to pass the call over to Tux. And Tux is going to lead us through the call tonight with Arnie. As I say, I would be grateful if you would stay on mute. Now, we have a significant amount of people on this call. So should you have a question, please would you put your questions in the chat? We have way too many people to manage the questions in any other way. So if you have a question as we go through the call, put your question in the chat, and either Paul or I will make sure we get to those questions as we go through the call. If there are any questions we don't get to, we'll speak to Arnie post the call and we'll get the answers to those questions back to you. Without further ado, Tux, I will pass over to your good self.
Thank you, Mr. Fell. Thanks, Andy. I mean, amazing intro and really looking forward to tonight's chat. I guess to introduce our guest, so Arnie had a playing career across the old National Soccer League in Australia, in Belgium, in Holland, and also in Japan. Club career of over 450 games and 160 odd goals and 54 appearances for the Socceroos, including 19 goals in a stellar career. Started his coaching career in 2018, was assistant coach at both the 2006 and 2010 World Cups under two phenomenal coaches, which I'm sure we'll touch on some of his experiences with them today. Head coach at the Asia Cup, Central Coast Mariners Championship winning coach, Sydney FC, FFA Cup and Championship winning coach, three-time Coach of the Year, and current Socceroos and Olyroos coach. So there's a little bit to unpick there, Arnie, but where I first wanted to start was a very brief story about an early leadership lesson that I got from you. So initially, other than being a mad football fan, my original passion for the game was that I attempted to be a professional player. And at age 16, I was playing for a club in Sydney called St. George. And St. George used to host the Socceroos when they were in camp in Sydney for training sessions. And that great club, the president there was a man known to many Australian people, Les Murray. And one afternoon, the Socceroos were training. Les came up and knew that I had some trials lined up with clubs in England and in Europe. And he said, go and speak to Arnie. And so I nervously went over to Arnie, who was doing some pre-training stretches with a very famous Socceroo of the time who will remain nameless. And I said, excuse me, Mr. Arnold, do you have a minute to chat to me? And the person that will remain nameless told me in no uncertain terms where to go. And Arnie turned to him and said, give us a minute, and took me aside and had a chat with me. And I was trialling later that year at Arnie's club in Holland. And he was very generous in the 5 minutes or so we spoke and said, when you get to Holland, look me up, tell the girls on reception, anything you need. Arnie said, give it to him. So, finally I get to say thanks. But the lesson out of that was the small things matter. And it's something I've reflected on over the journey. So pleased I get to say thank you in person. Good to catch up again, mate.
Thanks, Tux. And I have to be honest, I can't remember that. But
No.
but yeah, look, I think it's everyone in life has opportunities in life, and for a young player to come over and ask an older player for help or advice is something that's pretty natural to me.
Yeah, it's look, I want to start there with young players. You've obviously just been at the Olympics with the Socceroos, and there was a fair degree of fuss in the press when you took the head coach role for the Socceroos, where you made it clear that you wanted to be head coach of the Socceroos as well, and normally those roles were separated. So considering the audience, we've got a heavy business audience. I'm interested in the strategy and the thought process that you went through when making that decision in your interview process with Football Australia, and why you went down that path and why it mattered to you.
Yeah, look, well, I went to the 2018 World Cup to watch the Socceroos in Russia, and it was clear it was an older team. There was going to be some retirements within the next couple of years. So my plan always is still Qatar 2022, and reaching the World Cup is something that's special for Australia. And I could see that pretty much the icing on the cake was there, but the ingredients wasn't. And the ingredients was the depth of the quality of players coming through. There was a real limit in younger players. There had been since 2015 only 3 kids that debuted under the age of 22, and that was Daniel Arzani, Alex Gersbach, and Thomas Deng. And it was then about the plan of moving forward. And I think in all businesses and everything, planning is crucial, and the vision of what you have to get to that end goal is probably one of the most important things. So my vision was was to look at, okay, what's next? I could see that, it was an older group of players that were coming to the end that would have by 2020, which has happened, Jedinak, Milligan, Timmy Cahill, Brad Jones, that they retired, and they finished up with the Socceroos. So I looked at, okay, where do we replace it? What's next? And the only thing that I do believe in is the under 23 age group is the most important development side of things, where you can go to an under 23 World Cup, which is the Olympics, and give the kids this opportunity to individually further their careers, but also to create and build depth for the Socceroos. And so, when I got the job, I went to David Gallop and Luke Castley at the time, and there was some clashes at times with the two. With the Socceroos and the Socceroos with the commitments, but it was more about, okay, what's next, and learning about what's next. Because in the 90s, I was fortunate enough, I was a Socceroo then, but the Olympics in 1988, I went to the Olympics it was overage as a Socceroo. It was like a second World Cup. In 1992, they changed it to an under 23 competition with 3 overage players. And Eddie Thompson, in those days, he did both teams. He did the Socceroos and the Socceroos, but in those days we were in Oceania, and we didn't have as many commitments of international football. But me being part of the Socceroos in '97 and from 88 to '97 still, but having these young boys come into camp, and which was the Olympic boys, and by them being able to come in and with the same culture, the same messaging, the same style of play that we wanted to play, you could see the kids grow quickly to become a Socceroo. And I do believe, when people talk about the golden generation of football of Australian players, that was probably the starting point of that. The kids had, like Harry Kuehl and Timmy, and that they were already gone overseas at the age of 18. And then they started playing, with the Socceroos and the Socceroos, and it all moved forward. And that's where I believe the strength of the Socceroos is the depth of the Socceroos. And I took the Socceroos, and I thought it was a fantastic job to just to qualify because of the limited amount of players that we had in the A-League. There seemed to be a lack of trust within the organisation, but also the A-League clubs to give Australian kids a go. And so we qualified through in Thailand, which was a great thing. And now that, yes, we went to the Olympics, we did shock the world by beating Argentina 2-0 in the first game. And the kids, yes, they did stand up and showed that they belonged. So, yeah, the second result, losing 1-0 to Spain, who got the silver medal, was in the 81st minute, was a great performance. And obviously the last performance against Egypt was a bit less disappointing. But all I can say is that how many of those kids would have played 3 games in 6 days and played against the African champions? And, you know, how many of those kids would have played against South American opponents in their life, or European opponents, or, again, African? So what we take out of that is a great learning experience, lessons to be learnt along the way, and for those kids now to step up to become Socceroos, and I do believe that will happen.
Yeah, and I think we saw it certainly last A-League season, in my view, with a number of young kids really standing up and playing consistently regular football. And that showed with some of the talent that was on display in Tokyo. I think, you know, guys like Marco Tilio and fantastic talent.
But with a plan and with a great structure and having a great strategy, then that can work. That was done due to COVID. And the only reason, you know, there was that happened was the salary cap got reduced from 3.6 million back to 2.3. That meant that the A-League clubs couldn't sign as many foreigners. And so the kids had to be given an opportunity, and I do believe that they showed that they can step up. So the strategy needs to be in place in the future that, you know, that needs to happen.
Yeah, and there'll be some big clubs in Europe circling some of the talent that they saw. There was some immense performances. Keeping on the Olympics theme, as a dad of 3 football playing girls, the Matildas, can you give us some views as to why you think they're so popular? You know, the benchmark they're setting for football in Australia. Any other comments about those girls, because they're just phenomenal?
Yeah, they're pretty much like the golden generation of the boys, where the girls have individually gone overseas and doing great jobs overseas and performing great. And I think that, you know, Matildas did fantastic at the Olympics, and it all looks great moving forward for the World Cup. But I think if you speak to Tony Gustafsson, he'd probably say the same thing. It's about creating depth and getting more players. And one thing I do think that we lack in Australia, and I've been harping on this about this for years, is we don't play enough football. You know, if you look at Pedri, the Spanish player who was at the Euros, 19 years of age, he played 64 games this year. And if we compare him with Marco Tilio, he played 5. So it's you know, it's something that, in my view, that right down to grassroots, where at grassroots level the kids are only playing 18 games a year. They move up to NPL level or academies, and it's 22 games, and even the A-League's only 26 games. And it should be, you know, all of that should be in the 30s. So if they play, it's like anything, the more you do your trade, the better you get at it, and the more experiences that you have on the field making mistakes and learning from those mistakes makes you a better footballer. So again, it's the same in the Matildas. The W League is 9, 10 games, 12 games, and it's just not enough football at all. And we need to increase that enormously.
On the Matildas and Socceroos and collaborating, is there levels of planning that go in where we're trying to learn from each other and in both sides of the game? Is that something that you're encouraging? Is that something you're seeing more of?
Yeah, look, you know, I've had so much experience in the game since the 80s and the old NSL and going through and into the A-League. And the A-League concept was, you know, when you think about it, was, you know, 8 teams at the start, and 1 team is from New Zealand, and 21 rounds. And, you know, it was like a big bash cricket model. And I think it's, you know, well, we don't play our sport just in Australia. We've got to compete worldwide. And so, again, all those nations overseas are playing 10 months of the year, and we're playing 6 months of the year. So again, it gets back to match minutes. But I've just got so much passion for the sport, and it really is, for me, the greatest sport in the world. And obviously there's some other great sports, but for me it's that. And I do believe we've got some great talent in Australia. But again, it's about giving those kids an opportunity, and and we are working together with the state feds at FA and with the junior national teams. And since COVID hit, the junior national teams haven't played at all, the 17s and the 20s, and their World Cups are going to be called off, and we've got to find a way to fix that so we don't have another blackout of players coming through.
Yeah. I guess, like all professionals in whatever field, you're at a point in your career where you've got a high profile role, but what got you here is both playing and coaching and the education you've given yourself. Being the assistant coach at 2 World Cups under 2, world-class coaches, the one that's probably more profile globally is Guus Hiddink, where you were his assistant in Germany, but then also Pim Verbeek in South Africa. But if I go back to your playing days, the coaching style then under people like Frank Arok would have been very different to the way you coach now. So can you talk through some of your evolution of your coaching philosophies and some of the things you've learnt from those massive names in our sport?
Yeah, look, I think I've changed as a person a lot myself over the years as well, from learning from lessons, learning from mistakes, and I think that's the best way that you can learn, is don't beat yourself up about it, get on, move on with it, learn from that mistake and move forward. And in the 90s, late 80s and the 90s, the coach didn't even say good morning, good afternoon, didn't even ask how your family was, or wasn't really caring at all. It was more about just getting on the field and performing, do your job, and train hard and be the best on the field, and you play. Where that type of thing has changed enormously over time. With Guus Hiddink, Guus was a fantastic coach. I think if you asked any of the Socceroo boys that he worked with, he didn't have too many conversations individually with any player. It was very much Guus's way, and that's the way it's got to be. So I went into my coaching, and it's the greatest lessons in life for me is mistakes. And I took the 2007 Asian Cup squad as an interim coach. I failed. I admit that completely. I didn't. I wasn't ready for that job. I got asked by the organisation to do it as interim till they signed a new coach. They'd actually signed Dick Advocaat, had already signed, but he ended up staying in Russia at a club team. And I tried to do it the Guus Hiddink way. And I soon found out that wasn't going to work. Firstly, I didn't have the power and the runs on the board behind me, and also, the players had so much respect for Guus, and I have to admit it, not myself, because I'd done nothing in coaching. It was my first real coaching gig, and so my communication was poor, my planning was poor, my game plans were poor, and the players could see straight through me. And but then probably one of the best things then was I got to work with Pim Verbeek. And the way I am as a person was not the way I tried to coach, because I just thought that Guus's way was the way it was done because of what I experienced as a player myself, without conversations, without all that. But Pim Verbeek was very, very hands-on man management, and he's caring for the individual. He's caring for the person. It was just, I thought, wow, that's me. I would rather be that than that other way. And Pim put a lot of time and effort into man management and getting the best out of people. And I think Pim today still he has a great record, obviously, and unfortunately he passed away, but qualifying us very easily in 2010. The players loved him. He had a great relationship with them, and he knew how to get the best out of people and the staff. And I know everyone on this call is in businesses, and for me that's the biggest thing. It's these days it's about man management and getting the best out of people and making and getting them to do their job, delegating their job to them, and having the trust in those people that they'll do a great job for you, and and in a family cultural way, because I think when you do care for people more, then they put in that extra effort and yards. But yeah, those two were really different in terms of man management style. And as I said, it was a great learning curve for myself.
And then extending that out, you've coached obviously in Japan as well, so highly culturally different to where you are now. What were some of the experiences working in a foreign country? I'm assuming at the time not speaking the language, different style of football and different style of work. What were the learnings from that period when you were there?
Yeah, so then I've gone from 2010 with the Mariners and developed myself in a way that the way I wanted to work with the players, and I left the Mariners and I went overseas to Japan, and again I just felt like I had no control of planning. I had no control of recruiting the players. I was in charge of the team, but it wasn't the players that I really wanted. So at the end of the day, I was doing, coaching someone else's team, and I failed. Again, I couldn't communicate with the players. The players, as you said, culturally was so different. It was something I didn't enjoy, and I need to enjoy myself while I'm doing it and doing the job, because I need to have that passion to go to get things right. So, on the learning side of things, again, it was a cultural side of things, getting the message through the players. Did I try to change the wheel too quick and try to change their style of play, the system of play? Yes, I did. I probably went in gung-ho at it and said, right, this is how I want to play. This is a system I want us to play. This is a style I want us to play, and tried to change it all too quick. And they didn't buy into it. And if the player doesn't buy into the style or the tactical side, and they're going onto the field without a clear brain, without a clear idea of what their jobs or roles are, then they're not going to perform, and you're not going to win. And so my communication side of thing, I couldn't get through to them exactly what I wanted, as much as we tried on the training pitch. But I learned again from that. I should have been much more patient in trying to change things. I tried to change things way too quick into an organisation that wasn't mine. The players weren't mine. I should have got to learn, taken more time to get to learn the players and what the organisation wanted.
It's really interesting. There's a number of themes there with the way you reassess and then learn and then reapply skills and taking that time to think through the next period. And obviously we then come to the Sydney FC period in your career, which was hugely successful. And through that period developed future Socceroos and took some gambles on some really young talent in that period as well. So guys like Ryan Grant stand out, and Alex Wilkinson, and these sorts of players that are just stalwarts of the game now. And that comes through from obviously the way you learned to apply what you wanted. Going into a massive role like Sydney, one, I guess you're excited about the job, but how much control do you get over that forward planning? Because typically with a job like football, someone's sacked and you're brought in. There's not 3, 4, 5 months before you start the job where you've got that time. So can you talk us through your planning process and how you build that up in a very rapid period?
Yeah. So pretty much you inherit what you inherit, and that's always the way with coaching or even in business. You inherit when you come in and take over something, a position, an organisation. You inherit what's already there. It's about growing that and fixing it. And I came in and I felt that the squad had too many older players, and I cleared out nearly everyone I could clear out, even if they deserved to be cleared out or not. It was important that I could try and get as many players in that I could recruit my own players. And I recruited Mark Yanko from Austria, and I forget now, but I recruited a good number of players.
Bobo in there as well, I think.
Yeah, no, Bobo was in the third year, but I'm talking about the first year when I very first went in.
Right, yep.
Alessandro Del Piero was there at the time. Then how was he? I found out that he had his own dressing room. He was a very individual type player. I didn't want that, because for me, you have to treat everyone the same in a team situation if you're going to have any type of success. I found that the training facility at Sydney was not up to the name or the level of Sydney FC. So if you're not giving the players or the employees, if you're not giving them the resources to perform at a high level, how can you expect that to happen? So we fixed up their training facility, and even right down to the training pitch. The training pitch was not up to scratch for a firm or a company or a club that had the label of Bling Sydney FC. So it was a few things in the first year that I changed quite a bit that was off the field, and developed that family culture again to bring the players back to this is what it's about. It's okay, number one, Sydney, number two is the team, number three is the individual. It's not the individual first. And the only way we can be successful as a company or as a team is by being like a family. Staff, they're like my brothers. And for the players, they're your best mates, and the staff are here for you, to support you, to help you, and we're like your parents, and we're here to help. So then it was, the first year was great. We made the grand final unexpectedly. We lost to Melbourne Victory, and Melbourne Victory played us off the field that night. Then I was able to move some more players on and bring some more in. And then the second year at Sydney, we made the last 16 of the Champions League. And to be honest, again, my mistake. I focused more on the Champions League than the competition. And we ended up losing some games at crucial times when we should have been winning the club games, where I was focused on the Champions League. And we got the last 16 there. And then the year after that, we had no Champions League to worry about. And during that season, I felt a big part of what wasn't right at Sydney was the coach wasn't in charge of the recruitment of the players. And the CEO at the time, Tony Pinata, was more or less, he was in charge of that. And when I went to Tony, he was fantastic about it. You know, I said, look, I feel I'm coaching your team, your recruitment. That's not fair. If I'm going to coach and I'm going to have the pressure of winning games, it's only fair that I'm doing that recruitment. And so I took over the recruitment and the salary cap, and I put a guy, Terry McFlynn, in place to run the salary cap and to be in charge of recruitment. Him and the video guy go away and come back. Again, it's about resources, adding more people to make it work better, and to have hands on the wheel of, you know, what you supposedly expertise in. And yeah, and then we had 2 great years after that, and we got our recruitment right. And I do believe you only get one chance to recruit, especially in the A-League, and that's at the start of the year. If you get the recruitment wrong, then you'll have trouble, because there's a restriction on numbers of players. You only can have 23 players. So you need to get that right straight away, and it's important that you do get that right. And you know, one thing I added to the recruitment side of things is not just what I could see on the field. Like on the field, you can see, you can watch and say, okay, physically he's good. Tactically, he does a great job. Technically, he's very good. But one thing I wanted to put in the interview process was the person. Learning to know where the person's come from, how he's grown up, knowing what type of person that we were bringing into our family. For example, you know, if I said to Bobo or Adrian Mirzajeski at the time, okay, I'll put you on the bench, and the player who plays in your position scores, how are you going to feel? Yeah, I'm just happy the team wins, coach. That's the most important thing. Team wins. Yeah, okay, then you're answering the right question. You're part of the team. You want the team is number one, not the individual, and you're not going to be there to play for yourself. So adding that extra layer of, you know, getting to know the person. And then football is a small world that, you know, people will know somehow around the place. You can reach out to anyone who knows or has met that person before and can give you a good background on what type of person he is. So it's crucial that good people are involved in the organisation and the team.
I'm a massive Man United fan, and there's a lot that rings true there with the way Sir Alex Ferguson obviously approached talent development and recruitment over the journey, but it also links to your development as a leader. You've been really 3 or 4 times you've mentioned the youth and being there as a human being first and foremost. So that talent management piece, especially for young players, is critical. I'm interested in outside influences. So when we spoke last week, you talked about social media and the pain that is, and the challenge that is for some of these young players. Interested in your views there, because we all, as leaders, we've got young people in our teams that we're managing, and early in career people, and those outside distractions that can cause chaos in the way they develop. I'm interested in any stories or perspectives you've got there.
Yeah, look, and it's terrible. I'm very very fortunate. I don't know how to use it, and I don't want to use social media at all. And in the position that we're all in, I think leaders set people apart. It takes special people to be leaders because they take ownership of decisions, and they show the way for success. There's a lot of people that sit back and criticise. They would never know how to lead in a million years. And I would rather fail trying to be a leader than being a follower that doesn't really say too much. And when you have this social media side of things, like, I can see when it affects my players, and especially those young kids that were at the Olympics. I did have someone tell me that, who does do social media, that after the game, when we beat Argentina, that the boys were up on social media till 3 o'clock in the morning instead of having some good sleep. And they're reading all the good people's stories, all the good comments. As soon as you lose, those comments all change. And then how it affects the players. So you can see, after games, you can see the players sitting there looking at their phones, and you just know they're on the social media and seeing what everyone's saying about them. And it really can affect them enormously. And I try to put a ban on social media when we're in camp for the players leading into games, and straight after games, that they can only look at it till 10 o'clock at night. Then they've got to get sleep because they need to recover. Because if one of the last things you read before you go to bed is criticism, then it's going to affect your sleep. If it's something good, well, then you'll sleep well. And these days, in the old days when I played, there was probably only 2 newspapers and 1 TV station that could have an opinion. But these days, everyone has an opinion. And at the end of the day, you don't even know those people who have an opinion. And as I say to them, you should only take. Would you take criticism off someone that you'd only take advice from? So so it's about respect, the people that you respect and listen to and affect your life. And I had one player that I won't mention his name. I had him at Sydney FC. He was addicted to social media, and he would come in after the warm-up, and I could see him looking at his phone. And I knew what he was doing. At halftime, he'd come in. First thing he'd do is quickly look at the phone. And then after the game, look at the phone. So I grabbed him one day, and and I said, "Come on, your turn to buy me a beer." And he says, "Oh yeah, why?" I said, "We're going to the Bat and Ball Hotel." And that's where all the Sydney FC fans go, the Bat and Ball Hotel. And I went there, and I sat him, and this was on a Wednesday night, sat him down. I said, "Come on, buy me a beer." And so he bought me a beer. And I said, "See all those people sitting over there? They're the ones that are giving you a heap of shit on social media." He says, "How do you know?" I said, "Well, how do you know that they're not?" And I said, "Mate, you will never reach your potential if you stay addicted to social media, because there's no real good news stories." I said, "Oh, I want you to do me a favor." I said, "Okay, let's do 3 days before a game, and the day after you ban it." And I said, and let's see where your career can go, because I believe that you could play for the Socceroos. He quit. He gave me his word. He quit. Within 4 months, he was sold overseas. Within 8 months, he played for the Socceroos. And he's still playing at a great level now. And it's just, it's a sad thing for elite sportsmen, elite people in life that, only listen to the people that are close to you, and you can count them on one hand.
One of the things Andy talks about in the work we do together is the circle of trust. And it's only a very small circle, but if you've got that power around you, amazing things are possible.
Like I've got as I said, I have to trust my staff, and I do trust my staff like they're my brothers. I pick staff to work with that I always imagine that one game I get sent off, or one game I can't turn up because I'm ill or whatever, and the team continues on this journey. It can't be that if I'm not there, that it all falls over. So the people that I work with and that I trust, like they're my brothers, they got my back, I've got their back, and it's the same with the players, because once you send them over the white line, and you've got to trust them to do the jobs and do their roles and do their responsibilities. But again, giving them a bit of freedom to enjoy it is the most important thing, because the enjoyment side of things gets taken away, and then the energy goes, and then the performance goes. So enjoying your job is the most important thing.
And what about for yourself? Mental health discussions are very prevalent at the moment, with all of us locked down, and it's everywhere. And a good thing that we're able to talk about these things. You're in a really high pressure role, and there's a lot of outside noise and opinion, and good that you're not on social media, but you probably have harder interviews than this that you've had to deal with from people who have got stronger opinions than me. How do you deal with that balance and controlling some of those challenges?
Yeah, look, I think I got brought up by a father that was quite hard on me the whole way through, and that was the way it used to be when you were younger. But I've learned to adapt and change with life. I'm texting the players all the time. I'm here in Dubai. I'm stuck over here at the moment from after the Olympics, and I know myself. I couldn't do the 14 days quarantine coming home, so I'm here. But I'm in contact with the players all the time. I think these days it's just more about the caring of the human being that you're working with and communicating. Like, if there's no communication these days, then the player or the employee always feels insecure. So, I'm very big on communication for myself. I'm just enjoying life. How can I not be enjoying doing what I do? I'm involved in the greatest sport in the world, and okay, there's challenges out there at the moment, and I have had 2 or 3 offers to leave and move on and away from the Socceroos, but I just feel I can't walk out and leave the players down in this. It's more important that I'm here at this time with COVID and with everything around it than if the world was free, because then those other decisions could be made much quicker. But it's all about just helping the players, because at the end of the day, get as I said before, technically, tactically, physically, sometimes a frustrating thing in this job with coaching the Socceroos is the lack of control you can have over a lot of things. And that can be the players are playing at their clubs, player gets injured at their club, or the player comes in, he's not fit enough because he hasn't played enough match minutes, and the planning side of things. And I'm a bit of a control freak when it comes to planning, so I do beat myself up with that. But what's important is that you have not just plan A, plan A, B, C, and D, that if A falls over, B's ready to go. If that falls over, C's ready to go. And I have that all the time with my match plan. If we're up 1-0, or if we're down 1-0, if we're losing, of going to plan B or C. So, just making sure, and when I look in the mirror after a game, have I ticked every box every week of not giving the players an excuse of why we lost? Did we practice our attacking play? Did we practice set pieces? Did we do the video analysis right? Did we get the game plan right? And I'm always, again, critical on myself when I look in the mirror. If I feel I've failed somewhere, well, then I share that with the players. I take responsibility, and I'll say that in front of the players that maybe I got the game plan wrong. It's not your fault. Come on, let's get on with it. Move on. This is what life's about. Is about moving on. And again, just making sure that the players are mentally ready, because I'm really so big on the brain. And if anything that I have learnt more during COVID is the mental side of the people and the person, and getting the messaging right to the players, but also making sure that you can tell you look at their energy, look at their body language, and making sure that they're all right. Because if the biggest challenge in life for me with football or anything elite is getting, the personal side of life right and the professional side right. If personal's bad, it's going to pull the professional side down, and vice versa.
Yep.
So if things aren't good at home, if things aren't good in a relationship somewhere, or if a player's got any type of issue, or the employee, or they're not going to perform at their best. And it's about then making them feel free to be able to come to you to, talk to you about it, and for you to be able to get the best out of them.
That humanistic and empathetic, goes a long way. Being a good human being at the core of it, and looking after the people in your control and in your team, clearly stands out. There's a question that's come in from the chat, which is a good segue from your commentary about planning. And this person's clearly a coach of a football team. So they're interested in your planning process for training sessions at a club level, and how in advance you plan, and whether your planning is based on the previous game and what occurred, or whether there's a set routine or not a set routine, a block of things that you work on at a certain stage gate. Yeah,
look, I reflect on, I'll do a review of the opposition, of the last game. If I don't show anything negative, it's always positive of the good things that we've done on the training pitch and the good things that we did in the game. If there's anything negative, it could be in small groups or as an individual. To find out what's in the brain of that individual. Does he understand the role that I'm asking to do, or does he understand what his job is? So it will be in small groups or with the individual, but normally a review after a game is a positive review of what we've done well in the game, whether it's defending, whether it's attacking, or whatever. But that's what I'm saying. With the planning side, it's all about removing excuses. So, for example, when we're at the Mariners, when I was at the Mariners in Sydney, I used to give them 1.5 days off. And we would train 5, sometimes 6 days a week to make sure that the focus was more on ourselves. I'm a true believer that you only can control what you can control, and that's your own team. So yes, I look at the opposition. I have an analyst who'll come up with their strengths, their weaknesses, and we push that into the game plan. The start of after a game, we do the day after would be a bit of a review, but with a recovery session. The day after that is a fun session to get them going, get the energy back up, and we won't even talk about the last game, or we won't even talk about what's in front. It'll be more of a physical session to get the players going, to get their energy up, especially after a loss. One thing I learned from Goose Hitting was when you lose, we have to make our energy has to be high. When you win, that's when you can get angry, because you got to pick the players up straight away after a loss, and you can be harder on them after win because they've just won. So then it will be a physical training day of fun to get the energy back up and running. Then normally a day off, and then we do and focus on what we didn't do that well in the previous game, and that could be just say build up from the back or attacking play, or we didn't defend well, or we didn't press well from the front. We'll do that for that session. And then the last session I always do is the set pieces, the pressing and the set pieces, and finish off with a bit of fun. So it's the lead into the game is about improving ourselves for one day. The second one is this is how they play, and we work a bit on that. then the day before the game is how they build up from the back and how we're going to press them high. And this is their weakness. And that's very stop-start. It's 2 lots of 7 minutes. I pretty much give away the starting 11 so they can mentally get themselves prepared that they're starting. You know, otherwise you get some players who sit and they don't sleep at night because they're worrying they're left out of the starting lineup. I normally would announce the team the day before the game. And then, you know, the video side of things, we do the video set pieces the day before the game. After the team's announced, day of the game, we do a meeting on how we will win the game and where we show the players, you know, refresh what we did during the week. Very 10-minute meeting and show some clips of what we've done great, or we highlight, say, Liverpool, you know, what they do with making runs in behind the opposition, and this is how we're going to do it. So, yeah, again, eliminate all excuses.
I would have preferred you didn't use a Liverpool example, but that's okay. I'll let that one pass. There's another question here around when you're coming into a new club or a new team or a new role, do you think you can adapt to what's already in place, or do you think it's important to adjust and set your own tone from the outset?
I think, like, if you come into, first you got to look at the individual, every individual player and what their strengths are. Because if you start playing and you try to change a system, for me, the system doesn't make the players make the system. If you don't have wingers and you're trying to make people play on the wings, or if you don't have good overlapping fullbacks, but that's what you're asking them to do, but they physically can't do it, or technically they can't do it, you're never going to then get the best out of that one individual or the individual, which then will affect the team performance. So, you know, I still today, if I don't have a number 9, I've got to change the system to suit that we don't have a number 9, so that everyone will still play to their strengths. So first, I would say that if you go into a club and you inherit, you look at what the individuals can bring before you decide the system, and then you then say, okay, well, now I can change the system, or no, I need to stay with the same system of what they're at. And then again, it can be, again, like I said, with Sydney FC, the first year, what's their resources like? What's off the field? Do they have the resources what you need to make sure that they can improve as the players and as a team? And what can you do to add to that? Do they have a video analyst? If the answer is no, well, you need to add that. Do they have a fitness coach, or do they have? So you've got to create high standards, and that's the only way that with high standards that you will make and improve the team more and more. But again, I think it's looking at the individuals, making sure that the system suits the individual style of play.
I've got a question that's come here that I'm really fascinated to hear the answer to. How does your coaching style and your approach change between when you're coaching the Socceroos and coaching the Olyroos? You've got two different sets of players. What are the things you consciously think about when you're shifting between those two groups?
No, again, it's what I said with Eddie Thompson. The system and the style is very, very, and the messaging is very similar. You know, the last World Cup qualifiers we played in Q8, I had 30 players, and again, they're all different style, and they've all got their different strengths. And I changed the system 4 times to suit their strengths. With the Olyroos, you know what you're picking. You know, the hardest thing probably with national team stuff is you don't get time to work with them technically. Tactically, you get 1 session, maybe 2, and physically, they've got to have it before they come in. So the big part that you can work on when they're in camp is the brain and the mental side of it, and making them feel relaxed and making sure that the messaging is simple and clear. 3 messages with and without the ball, and that's it. If you give too much, adds confusion, then they go out with a confused brain, and you won't get the best out of them. So the style that my style always is you go out on the pitch to win every game. It's not that, you know, you hold back and try and draw a game or try and hold on. You know, the last game at the Olympics against Egypt, we had 3 suspensions. I had to change the system because of those 3 suspensions. One of those suspensions was a big one in Nathaniel Atkinson, which meant then I had to move Thomas Deng, who's played a lot of football at Melbourne Victory as a right back. and he's not a player that can go up and down the pitch the whole time. So I had to change our style, that he would play as a flat right fullback and put Dylan Pirius as a high right winger. So he didn't have to, you know, go inside. He just stays high and wide. So he gives us a width on the right. And on the left, I said, Joel King, you go and play high and wide on the left. And Lockie Wales, you go in as a double 9. So we could, like a 4-4-2 system, with Dengi staying flat. And but again, it's about playing players to their strengths. And when you do that, then the system looks after itself.
Got a great question here. So not all players get into the starting 11 each week, and in business, leaders often have to have challenging discussions. What's your approach towards giving messages that you know will be on the receiving end of some disappointing news? And how do you keep those people motivated, or those players motivated?
Yeah, well, I always say that, and I believe this, players 12 to 23 are the most important in the squad. 1 to 11 are happy because they're starting, they're playing. So my communication with 12 and to 23 has to be more than 1 to 11. With the individual, it's honesty. You have to be honest. I don't make the FIFA rules that states you it's 11 v 11. I'd love to play 23 v 23. And I say this to the boys as a group. The worst thing about coaching is having to leave players out. You know, I don't enjoy flying a player from London all the way to Sydney to play a Socceroos game and don't put him on the pitch at all. I'd love to be able to do, you know, to give everyone minutes and time. But the most important thing, I think, that every individual would like is just honesty. So if whatever that decision is, as hard as it is for him to take, it's all about, you're one of the best 23 players in Australia. We have, you know, you're a great player. We have respect for you, but, you know, and tell him the reason why he's not starting. And as I said, being honest with people, because once you lie once, in my view, once you lie once to one person, that one person will go back into the dressing room or back into the business and say, oh, he's just lied to me about whatever. And that'll get around, and then you lose trust. And once you lose trust, as a leader, then you're in trouble. Then it's time to move on.
So I think we've only got a couple of minutes left before some UK people are dropping, and but there's another great question here, which is, you know, what gets you out of bed? What's your reason for being? It's a big, deep one to finish with.
No, well, there's a couple. I love what I do, and I just want to help people, help kids, and help people. You know, I've changed so much as a person myself. When I first started coaching, it was all about me. I'll be honest. It was all about me. And then I realized that, well, okay, that didn't work too good. So I thought, okay, well, if it's now about the player and it's about the person, well, then I'll get paid back with the results by them. So, you know, I just, again, I want to help the sport of football in Australia as a Socceroos coach. I want to help these kids or these players on a great journey in life that gets them to a World Cup in Qatar, 2022. And again, with those Olyrood boys, that Olympics experience they had is one they'll never forget. And I reflect a fair bit back on the great times I've had in my life and my with the sport that I'm involved in. And if I can just give 20, 30 people that help to have a life like I've had, then I'd be an extremely proud man, because I've really had a great life. I don't complain any day. I am hard when it comes to working with the board and that, because of my expectations and the standards that I always want is high for us to be successful. and I want that backing. But so my stress of planning is always there. But for the players, it's just to help them with a great journey in life and enjoy that journey.
I think, Andy, I think we're almost at time. I could keep going, but I think probably right for everybody that's in the UK and other parts of the world. Some amazing questions from the audience, but Arnie, I just really want to thank you for your honesty and the humility and the lessons that we've learned. There are some, amazing tidbits there that we can take away. And I saw Andy furiously taking notes, so I'm expecting a copy of them on my desk in the morning, please, Mr. Fell. But really appreciate you taking the time, and I might pass back to Andy.
Yeah, thank you for the invite, and hopefully everyone got something out of it, and I really appreciate you inviting me on.
Yeah, so I will just say a few words. If I'm very conscious of time, and I know people will be moving to whatever they have next in their lives. To your point, Tux, I did take a whole host of notes. I'll turn that into a Future You blog and obviously share that with all the Future You members. It is a Sydney FC shirt on the wall behind me. For those that are unsure, I do love all things Sky Blue, Coventry City, Forfar Athletic, and the amazing Sydney FC. So, I took a huge amount from that as well. Arnie, I want to thank Phil Moss again for setting this up. And I would stress to absolutely everybody that I'm a fundamental believer that relationships are the foundation of absolutely everything. And to put tremendous effort into building your network, building your relationships, I truly believe that is still the way that business gets done. And Arnie spoke about trust. And again, there were so many messages in that, and also trust in youth. I was very lucky early in my business career that a great leader that I worked for, a guy called Malcolm McDowell, he gave me an opportunity very, very early in life to take on a big role and a big business. And I do believe we've got to be far more courageous, those of us in business, about trusting youth and giving youth the opportunity to do what they do. So a massive thank you to you, Tux, for putting the time and the effort into this. And thanks to you, Arnie. That was a real pleasure and a privilege.
And just before I go, Andy, just quickly, and I wrote up a thing during COVID about coaching or leadership management, and it's like an 8. If you had a pizza, it's about getting the sizes of the pizza slices all the same size, because again, I learned the hard way, and the hard way was for me was I thought technically and tactically, the tactical style of football, the size of the pizza was quite big, right? But on the media side, my side of the media when I first started, the pizza was that thin. I was terrible. So I went away and got some media help and some advice. And these days with coaching or leadership, it's not just one way. For me, you've got to be very, very good at 8 to 10 things. And I've written it down, like leadership, the technical style, planning and recruitment, man management, staff delegating, complementing what you do, specializing in what they do, the media side of things, crisis management, and politics. And you've got to be now a football coach or a leader. It's not just about being able to do one thing good. He's got to be able to do 8 to 10 things good, and trying to get that balance right with everything and specialize in all of those things, I think sums it all up. And in the middle I wrote, but in the middle, connecting all those things together is passion. And I think if you have the passion, then you're willing to do all that, to get all that done. But as I said, it's not these days. People go, well, coaching, it's just about football, tactics, what they do on the pitch. That's an eighth of it.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think your honesty in terms of your willingness to learn from mistakes and be very open about the mistakes that you've made as the greatest learning opportunities. But also, I believe too many people, they try something once, it doesn't work for them, they sink back to their comfort zone, and it's about learn the lessons, become stronger, and move forward. So
well, you can't let a hurdle get in your way. What are you going to do? Just going to go up to the hurdle and stop, or are you going to go around it and move on? And I think, one of the biggest things with hitting was, straight after the game, let it go. That's over. The past is the past. It's all about the future. You can sit there and talk to people about things that have happened 2 years ago. Well, that's all gone. What did you learn from it? Okay, I learned this. Right, let's put that in place. Let's move forward. Because otherwise, if you reflect on the past too much, then you're not moving forward.
And the final thing I would say is, I believe you gave us a massive message, which I fundamentally believe in, that one of the signs I've got on my wall is whose advice do I listen to? And I think far too many people accept criticism from people they wouldn't accept advice from. I only accept criticism from people who are aspirational, people who are perhaps living the life that I want to live. And I think that is a massively powerful message.
And you'll always come times in your life where it'll always get proven. I'll just finish off with this, right? We beat Argentina at the Olympics. After the game, I had 380 text messages. We lost to Spain. I had 15. We lost to Egypt. We had 8. I had 8. And those 8 are the ones that are there for me every day of my life. They're the ones.
Powerful. Thanks, Arnie. Tremendous session. Thanks, Tux. Thanks, Mossy. And massive thanks to everyone for giving up some of their time or investing some of their time in what I truly believe has been a fantastic session. So please, wherever you are around the world, thank you. Take care and keep winning.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Tux.
Graham.
Cheers,
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks.